First of all, Musk and this other guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, are in charge. Musk, as in the guy who bought Twitter, now X, fired a ton of people and turned it into a chaotic dumpster fire. And Ramaswamy, who once joked about firing federal employees based on their social security numbers being odd or even, yeah, real geniuses work here. But here's the kicker. This department isn't even a real government agency. It's just Musk and Vivek making a report on which jobs they think should be cut, which will likely be done with zero regard to how our government actually functions. They're basically trying to use Musk's move fast and break things tech approach to the federal government. Except breaking things here means people could lose vital services like Social Security or disaster relief. And don't even get me started that Trump wants Congress to cough up $50 million in taxpayer money to get this nonsense started. So, in short, it's another Trump stunt that sounds like Drain the Swamp 2.0. But it's actually just a bunch of rich guys messing with stuff they don't understand and risking the livelihoods of ordinary people. Meanwhile, they're branding the whole thing with the cryptocurrency meme. Because clearly, that's the level of seriousness that we're dealing with. But honestly, it's terrifying that something this poorly thought out could actually happen.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about the fake outrage and panic from liberals over their worst nightmare, which is a Republican actually doing what Republicans have promised that they would do for a long time now, which is to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government.
Do a little more examples of this squander of what your money, guys, the government's money, that is your money. So let's show you a few more things of outrageousness that our tax dollars are being spent on. $100,000 to see if a sunfish is more aggressive when given gin or tequila.
Oh my gosh.
$1 million to see if selfies make you happy. $1.5 million to study the mating calls of country frogs to see if they are different than city frogs. That, Cheryl, is what hardworking Americans' tax dollars are going to.
Oh, I have more. Why is the University of Mississippi spending $12 million for monkeys on meth? And why did the EPA spend $620 grand for armor and night vision equipment? Somebody explain that one to me. But I'll tell you what, the biggest one that killed me was the fact that the IRS between October of 21 and 23, they've got $50 million in unpaid taxes from their own employees.
Whoa.
IRS employees owe $50 million in back taxes. I want the IRS so gutted at this point. And Elon Musk, remember what he did with Twitter? He slashed out 70% of the employees at Twitter.
Okay, and they're currently fear-mongering over what Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk may do as co-chairs of the Department of Government Efficiency, which is a special advisory group that will help Trump accomplish that mission. And it seems as if liberals really don't understand how business works, and they really don't understand how bloated the federal government is, because again, they're currently fear-mongering over this new Department of Government Efficiency.
Hey, this is beyond parody. Okay, listen to this. Donald Trump wants to reduce the size of government, eliminate superfluous and unnecessary government jobs, cut down the number of government departments, and he will be hiring not one, but two people to run a new Department of Government Efficiency. The names of those people are Elon Musk and multiple time guest on the David Pakman Show, Vivek Ramaswamy. Consider how every detail is hilarious. A department on efficiency, which will have two leaders, unlike every other department that has one leader. It's mind-blowingly hilarious. And creating a government agency to clean up government agencies, does that make sense? None of it makes sense. The one thing I will tell you is, if we want to be at all even potentially optimistic, it's potentially optimistic, the fact that this is all so vague, and the fact that you do have two people running it, Elon and Vivek, as opposed to one, and they might get in each other's way. They might not efficiently run the Department of Efficiency because there's two of them instead of one making the decisions. It could be that this ends up accomplishing absolutely nothing. If they get their way, they will decimate departments. They will do wholesale firings of people. I mean, it'll be, if this actually works out to be what Trump wants it to be, it will be very bad, very, very bad. But
And they say he did efficiency on Twitter. Twitter nearly fell apart when he fired like 3/4 of the staff, right? And now there's no partner managers. You can't talk to anybody at Twitter. Every once in a while, the site completely breaks down and shuts down. He's lost over $20 billion at a bare minimum on Twitter. Is this the efficiency we're talking about? How much damage is he going to do, not just to the American government, but to the American people before we realize it's not so efficient?
A reminder that you destabilize the American government and the American markets enough, and you will have trouble even moving our bonds. You'll all of a sudden this economy, which depends, and this government, which depends on unloading a lot of this paper on China and other nations, you're going to have trouble unloading it. It seems incredible because I know we're fat and happy in America. Like, we just have the economy, we're the best. We have this myth of American exceptionalism, but all of a sudden, life could change dramatically here in this country because of this destabilization.
Yeah, so this is your daily reminder that liberals, the left, understand absolutely nothing when it comes to real life, especially when it comes to how businesses work, how corporations work, how large organizations work. Because David Pakman essentially argues that, well, this Department of Government Efficiency is not very efficient because it's being ran by two people. Therefore, it is, by definition, inefficient. When this guy doesn't seem to understand that almost all major corporations in this country, which are very efficient, they kind of have to be because, again, they're big corporations. And in order to survive, you probably should try to be as efficient as you can, right? But some of the most efficient organizations in the world are ran by a board of advisors, right? You have executives that run the company, right? You don't just have one person making all the decisions. That's not how it works, right? No efficient organization is run by just one person. The real problem when it comes to inefficiencies within an organization is not having a board of directors or multiple executives making decisions. No, it's when you have a team of people doing a job that one person can do, or when you have an outdated approach in regards to production and getting things done within the organization. Like, for example, if you do not have the current technology that would make a worker more productive, or that would enable a company to downsize on employees, they don't have to have as many people because they have technology that makes each individual worker more productive, or that can actually just do the job itself.
Here's where you're going to get the money. You're going to get the money by making these organizations more efficient. You're going to invest in technology. I don't think the federal government has invested in a lot of technology. I don't think there's a lot of AI in the government. I don't think there's a lot of high-end computing in the government. We're going to use modern technology to make the government more efficient and cut down on the administrative costs. Administrative cost is huge in the U.S. government.
What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I saw that interview. Most people's criticism of this appointment is saying it's just consultants and they're just pointing fingers at waste. No, it isn't. It's different this time. Let me explain why. Elon has his own network, 1 billion people watching him every day. He's the largest contributor to his own network, X, formerly Twitter, as we all know. So here's how this is going to work. Let's say they identify a cost-plus contract. These are egregious contracts. Maybe in Massachusetts, you're building a bridge to nowhere, you're spending $2 billion. He'll focus on that. He'll show you why it's a waste. And then he'll start to shame out Elizabeth Warren or somebody else to millions of people online, squeezing her head in front of her own voters. I love this idea. Now, it's going to be very contentious. That's the power he has. He doesn't need to have legislative power. He can squeeze from the bottom up. Your senator, your governor, your manager is wasting your money. Here's how. I'm going to remind you about it every day until you make her change. Love it. I love it.
And we cannot forget the problem of hiring people to do jobs that are completely unnecessary to the organization as a whole, that does not improve the bottom line. Like, for example, DEI, right? You guys saw when the government was spending so much money during the pandemic, a lot of these companies, they went and got these DEI departments. They hired a bunch of woke revolutionaries because they wanted to virtue signal. But as soon as the economy started to get worse and the government money ran out, where's the first place that they cut? Well, it was from the DEI departments. Well, why is that? It's because they were unnecessary. They were inefficient. And the goal of DOGE really is to just bring some of these organizational practices that we see in the private sector to the public sector to make the government run better, right? To actually improve the productive capabilities of the government while also downsizing the government. Again, a concept that these people really don't understand. And the reason why you know this is because they always use this example of Twitter to smear Elon Musk. First and foremost, these people were boohoo whining crying, claiming that when Elon Musk fired about 75% of Twitter's employees when he first bought the company, they said, oh, Twitter's going to fall apart. Twitter's going to collapse. It's not going to be functional. Turns out Elon Musk was right. X did not require that many employees in order to run. In fact, Twitter, X, actually has more features and more capabilities since Elon Musk took it over. And they have developed these capabilities in a record amount of time, right? X, by definition, has become more efficient. It's become a better product after Elon Musk downsized the company. So the example that they use to basically smear Elon Musk as inefficient or not understanding efficiency actually is the best example of how Elon Musk improves efficiency within an organization. Again, these people know absolutely nothing at all, right? They know absolutely nothing, okay? But this is what you get when you live in La La world where you don't really understand reality, okay? And Vivek has already come out here and started proposing ideas about how he wants to downsize the government. And one of the ways that he has proposed has a whole lot of liberals freaking out online.
Get in there on day one, say that anybody in the federal bureaucracy who is not elected representatives obviously are elected by the people, but of the people who are not elected, if your social security number ends in an odd number, you're out. If it ends in an even number, you're in. There's a 50% cut right there. Of those who remain, if your social security number starts in an even number, you're in. And if it starts with an odd number, you're out. Boom. That's a 75% reduction done literally stochastically, okay? One of the virtues of that, it's a thought experiment, not a policy prescription, but one of the virtues of that thought experiment is that you don't have a bunch of lawsuits you're dealing with about gender discrimination or racial discrimination or political viewpoint discrimination. Actually, the reality is you've at mass, you didn't bring the chisel, you brought a chainsaw. I guarantee you, do that on day one and do step two on day two. On day three, not a thing will have changed for the ordinary American other than the size of their government being a lot smaller and more restrained, spending a lot less money to operate it. And most people who've run a company, especially larger companies, know this. It's 25% of the people who do 80 to 90% of the useful work. These government agencies are no different. So now imagine you could do that same thought experiment, but not just doing it at random, but do it still at large scale while having some metric of screening for those who actually had both the greatest competence as well as the greatest commitment and knowledge of the Constitution.
Yeah. So again, clearly a businessman trying to apply business principles that work in the private sector to the public sector. And there's no doubt in my mind that these principles definitely work because, again, the government is filled with waste, fraud, and abuse, right? You don't have business people running the government, which, again, is the problem. This is why we're spending so much money. And he's saying, listen, yeah, we could easily cut out 75% of the employees. These people should not have had a job in the first place, right? The job should not exist, okay? Shouldn't exist. And he says, well, the way we can do this in a fashion that is non-discriminatory is just by using social security number, right? I mean, it kind of sucks, but hey, this is the reality of what has to happen. Now, how has the left interpreted what Vivek said? How have they interpreted? Well, they basically spent this into Vivek claiming that he wants to cut social security by 75%, which is not what he said at all, right? Like, for example, this guy, Dan Weiss, says Vivek's plan to cut Social Security by 75% will plunge many seniors into poverty. His system is like cutting off your head to lose weight. This is beyond shameless. It's cruel. Now, he didn't say that at all, but this is how the left, this is how they interpret this. Who the F is Vivek Ramaswamy anyway? And someone tell him to keep his filthy fingers off my Social Security benefits I've been paying into for the last 45 effing years. Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk, who infamously had one of the worst election predictions ever. He says the poverty rate for seniors before Social Security, 40%. Poverty rate for seniors after Social Security, 10%. Vivek wants grandma to starve. So again, these interpretations of what Vivek said are so bad that we need a community note here, right? There's been community notes added to clarify what Vivek said, right? That he's not talking about cutting Social Security. But again, the party of fighting misinformation, disinformation are the most active spreaders of misinformation / disinformation, right? You see how that works? Again, there's always projection with these folks. But Vivek, again, he's going into more details about what he actually wants to do. And this is what the left is really, really, really afraid of. Take a look.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given us.
You've got what has been called a deep state. You've got people who have been career bureaucrats in place right now. Didn't President Biden put in plans to ensure that you're not going to be able to fire those people at all? How do you get around that? And, I asked Joni Ernst, are you for term limits? She says, yes, I am for term limits, as long as the people around me are also for term limits. That's not in place right now. So how do you get rid of those people who are dug in?
Well, a lot of what's happened is President Biden has made a lot of changes trying to entrench the administrative state. The Supreme Court has slapped them on the wrist numerous times. So we're working with a legal landscape here that is historic. You think about a president of the United States like Donald Trump, elected with the mandate he's been given, both chambers of Congress belonging to Republicans, a 6-3 conservative majority in the Supreme Court. Maria, if we don't downsize the federal government now, it's never going to happen in the future as well. So this is a historic opportunity. We're not actually going to squander this, but I think part of the key is to move quickly, to move effectively. I think that mass deregulation that I talked about earlier, that gives us the industrial logic to then make cuts to that bureaucracy, and moving quickly is our objective.
Have you thought about moving some of these departments or agencies out of Washington?
It's funny you bring up this point. Yes is the answer, but here's why. They'll say, well, what happens to the people who live in Washington, D.C.? Here's the dirty little secret in the federal bureaucracy today. Most people don't even show up to work. So if you require most of those federal bureaucrats to just say, like normal working Americans, you come to work 5 days a week, a lot of them won't want to do that. And by the way, that creates a logic for many of those agencies being outside of D.C. in the first place. So these are, again, examples. It's a great point you just brought up.
So would you
sweeping
move,
changes we're able to make quickly.
You could move the energy department to Texas or to Pennsylvania. You could move agriculture somewhere else. Is
Yes.
that what you're thinking?
Well, look, I think that, yes, absolutely. But I think even bigger picture than that, many of these agencies should be downsized wherever they are. And for whatever does remain, move many of them out to be where they're more accountable to the people. And by the way, if you have many voluntary reductions in force of the workforce in the federal government along the way, great. That's a good side effect of those policies as well. And so our goal is not to be cruel, by the way, to the individual federal employees. Most of them, I do want to say this, are individually good people, and we want to be compassionate and generous in how we handle this transition. But the real issue is there's just too many of them. We don't need 4 million, and we shouldn't have 4 million civil servants who can't be or aren't even elected or can't be removed from their positions. It's anti-democratic.
Real quick,
Yeah, so any reasonable person that's not a leftist or liberal living in Looney Tunes world where they believe that big government is by definition good and that we must spend a whole bunch of money on things that we really don't need. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, right? It sounds like a good plan to downsize the government, to cut jobs that are unnecessary, and to move these agencies out of Washington, D.C., right? I think that is an aspect of all this that is extremely underrated because of the ideological creep that happens within these organizations, right? When you have all these organizations that are just in one big liberal town, you're going to tend to hire people from that area or people that want to move to that area. And they're going to be more ideologically to the left, right? And that ideological influence gets within the organization, and that's how you have the weaponization and politicization of the government happen, okay? So if you move these organizations out to other parts of the country, right, where they're more accountable to the people, you also help solve that problem as well too, right? This is something that has to be done. It needs to be done. And this is why this is the most exciting Republican administration that I can think of in a long time, okay? The future Republican Party, post-Trump, needs to embrace these things and to actually double and triple down on what Trump started, right? That's the great thing about Trump. Trump has brought something to the Republican Party that has desperately been needed for a long time, not just in the electorate, but also in his leadership. It is young and it is innovative, right? So we have youth, we have bright minds, the best minds really, that are now aligning with the Republican Party. And that is something that the Republican Party needs to continue to embrace moving forward into the future, right? If we're going to make this country great again, it's not about looking into the past. It's really about looking into the future and saying, this is what we want to be, right? We want to stick to the principles and the ideals that make this country great in the first place. But in order to become greater than we ever were, we need to embrace innovation in youth, right? And that is what the modern day Republican Party is becoming. And I love it. I really, really, really love what's happening right now. I am super excited about this next administration. And I can't wait to see what happens, right? I mean, even if they can do 50% of the things they're talking about, that is a massive success. I mean, to be honest with you, if they only can do 25% of it, that's a massive success, right? Because let's be real. Most of these politicians that end up running for office and they get elected, they only end up doing about 5%, 10% of the things that they claimed that they were going to do, right? So again, if we can get 25%, 50%, 75%, that's still a W, okay? But the new direction of the Republican Party is something I'm extremely excited about. And I think that's part of the reason why the electorate for the Republican Party has expanded. That's why we now have the popular vote. We are the majority in this country, and we can continue to be so as long as we embrace youth and innovation. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.